The first-class cabin of the transatlantic airliner hummed with a low thrum of powerful engines and the hushed murmurs of privileged travelers settling in. It was an oasis of muted beige leather, polished wood veneers, and the subtle clinking of glasses, a world away from the bustling airport left behind. Amidst this calculated luxury, Leonardo DiCaprio found his seat by the window. Instantly recognizable to billions, yet choosing anonymity. He wore a deliberately unremarkable charcoal hoodie, well-worn jeans, and carried only a scuffed leather messenger bag and a hefty volume titled Guardians of the Earth. He seemed to fold into the seat, his attention immediately captured by the pages, creating an aura of quiet introspection. Across the aisle sat Viktor, a man who wore his success like a neon sign. Probably in his late 40s, everything about him screamed new money. The impeccably tailored suit, almost too sharp, the blindingly bright silk tie from a brand known more for price than taste, and the ostentatious gold chronograph on his wrist, which he consulted with unnecessary frequency, ensuring anyone nearby caught its gleam. Viktor surveyed the cabin, his gaze pausing critically on Leo. He nudged his companion slightly, though no companion was mentioned in the original. Adding one briefly could heighten Viktor's need to show off, but let's stick to the original cast for now. Viktor mentally catalogued Leo's simple attire, his lack of expensive luggage, the focused way he read his likely pretentious book. How did someone like that get in here? Viktor thought. A flicker of irritation crossing his face. The very presence of such ordinary presentation in this exclusive space felt like a personal insult to his own carefully curated image of affluence. The silence, punctuated only by the cabin's hum and the rustle of Leo's book pages, seemed to amplify Viktor's disdain. He couldn't simply let it go. Catching Leo's eye during a brief moment when the actor looked up, Viktor leaned into the aisle with a practiced, overly familiar grin. "Rough day down in coach, friend?" he began, his voice carrying deliberate weight. Several nearby passengers glanced over. "Managed to snag an upgrade, did we? Because, he gestured expansively with the hand bearing the gold watch. "These seats don't exactly come cheap." He paused, clearly expecting a reaction, perhaps defensiveness or embarrassment. Leonardo looked up, a flicker of surprise replaced by a calm, almost analytical gaze. He offered a polite, fleeting smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Something like that," he replied, his voice even and quiet. Viktor pressed on, undeterred. "So, what miracle allows you to grace us with your presence? What line of work justifies this kind of expense, eh?" Leo hesitated for just a fraction of a second, perhaps deciding how little he could say. "I work mainly in the film industry," he stated simply, adding, almost as an afterthought, "and I'm also quite involved in environmental advocacy." Viktor blinked, then let out a short, barking laugh. "Film? Hollywood stuff? And saving the planet?" He rolled his eyes dramatically. "Oh, that's rich. Literally. Sounds noble, I suppose, but let's be honest. That's all just fantasy, isn't it? Not exactly the engine of the real economy." He leaned back, smugness radiating from him. "Seems a bit out of your league up here, no offense." Leo merely nodded slowly, his gaze already returning to the intricate diagrams in his book, offering a non-committal, effectively closing the conversation from his end. Viktor, misinterpreting Leo's disengagement as meekness, felt a surge of superiority. He raised his voice slightly, ensuring others could hear his pronouncements. "You see," he declared, addressing the cabin as much as Leo, "it takes real grit, real business acumen to succeed. I've spent over 20 years building a manufacturing empire. We make tangible things, employ hundreds. That's what generates wealth. not playing make-believe on screen or talking about carbon footprints. He puffed out his chest. People like us belong here. He then leaned conspiratorially towards Leo again. Just some advice from someone who knows. If you want to fly first, try looking the part. Presentation matters. Otherwise, he smirked, people might think you're just warming the seat for someone important. Right at that moment, as if summoned by the mention of importance, a senior flight attendant glided down the aisle. She moved with an effortless grace, her smile professional, yet radiating genuine warmth as she stopped directly beside Leo's seat. "Mr. DiCaprio," she said, her voice modulated but perfectly clear, instantly cutting through the cabin's low hum. "Apologies for the slight delay with the pre-departure checks. Can I offer you your usual Pellegrino with lime, or perhaps something stronger to start?" The world seemed to slow down for Viktor. DiCaprio. The name hit him like a physical blow. His jaw went slack, the smug smirk evaporating, replaced by a mask of utter disbelief. He stared, eyes wide, from the attendant's deferential posture to Leo's unsurprised, politely declining face. The blood drained from his own face, leaving it pale beneath his expensive tan. Several passengers nearby exchanged amused glances, a low ripple of recognition and understanding spreading through the front of the cabin. The flight attendant, sensing the sudden tension and Viktor's shock, offered him a brief, professional nod that somehow conveyed amusement, before confirming Leo's request to wait for service and moving gracefully away. Viktor sat frozen, a statue carved from mortification. The silence felt deafening. He could feel the weight of multiple pairs of eyes on him. He saw a woman across the aisle suppress a giggle behind her hand. Someone else discreetly angled their phone, the screen's glow reflecting in the dim cabin light, clearly documenting his colossal blunder. He fumbled with his tie, suddenly feeling constricted. He stammered, trying to regain composure, but failing miserably. "I had no idea." Leo finally lowered his book fully, marking his page. He looked at Viktor, not with anger or triumph, but with a kind of weary understanding. "It happens," he said, his voice still quiet but resonant. "People often jump to conclusions based on appearances. It's a very human thing to do." Viktor forced a laugh that sounded more like a strangled cough. "Right, yes, of course. Just making conversation, you know? Banter. Huge admirer of your work, Mr. DiCaprio. Titanic Inception, brilliant. Absolutely brilliant." His compliments tumbled out, clumsy and desperate. His flustered state was interrupted by a young woman, perhaps in her early 20s, who had nervously approached from a few rows back. Clutching her phone like a lifeline, she spoke hesitantly. "Mr. DiCaprio, I'm so sorry to bother you, but I'm such a massive fan. Your environmental work is incredible too. Would it be possible to get a quick selfie?" Leo's demeanor softened instantly. He gave her a warm, genuine smile. "Of course," he said kindly, "but let's make it fast so we don't hold up the aisle." As the young woman beamed, capturing the photo, the man who had been sitting behind Viktor leaned forward and whispered loudly enough for several to hear. "Buddy, do you realize you were just giving business advice to Leonardo freaking DiCaprio? The guy probably makes more on one movie than your empire does in a year." The man chuckled and shook his head as he leaned back. Viktor shrank further into his seat, wishing the luxurious leather would swallow him whole. Leo, overhearing the comment and noticing Viktor's profound discomfort, offered a small olive branch. He turned slightly towards Viktor and said mildly, "Honestly, don't worry about it. It's good to have perceptions challenged now and then. Keeps life from getting dull. Viktor could only manage a weak, jerky nod, utterly incapable of speech. He spent the remainder of the long flight in a state of agonizing silence, replaying the encounter in his head, each memory stinging more than the last. He avoided eye contact with everyone, acutely aware of the stifled chuckles and knowing looks occasionally directed his way. As the plane smoothly descended towards its destination, the lights of the city sprawling beneath them, the senior flight attendant made one final pass. She stopped again by Leo's seat, handing him a small, embossed card. "Mr. DiCaprio," she said clearly, ensuring her voice carried, "on behalf of the captain and crew, thank you for flying with us today. We hope to welcome you aboard again soon." The final nail in Viktor's coffin of embarrassment. When the plane reached the gate and the seatbelt sign pinged off, Leo gathered his single bag and stood up. He glanced briefly at the still-frozen Viktor, offered a simple, polite nod, and murmured, "Safe travels." Then he was gone, melting into the stream of disembarking passengers, some of whom paused to stare or whisper as he passed. Viktor remained rooted to his seat long after the cabin had emptied. The expensive suit felt like sandpaper, the gold watch a heavy weight of shame on his wrist. The hushed luxury of the first-class cabin now felt like a courtroom where he had been publicly tried and found guilty of arrogance and ignorance. It had been years, perhaps decades, since he had felt so thoroughly humbled. The lesson was brutal but clear. The true measure of a person had absolutely nothing to do with the clothes they wore or the assumptions one might make. It was a lesson he wouldn't soon forget.